So we are in the month of May, and that means it is Mental Health Awareness Month. So important. And I think the sooner we start talking about things with our kids, the better. I just got this wonderful book in the mail. It's called Crushing OCD. It's a workbook for kids, and I've been looking forward to talking with Natasha today, but I'm also looking forward to actually doing this myself, and I think that's okay. Natasha Daniels, thank you so much for joining us. So let's begin with this. What is the difference between OCD and anxiety? And is there a difference?
Yeah, there is a difference, and it's important to know. So I'm glad you asked that because first, they're in different parts of the brain. So the mechanisms of anxiety versus OCD are completely different. They're also categorized now in the diagnostic criteria as different disorders. OCD is not an anxiety disorder any longer, and the way it shows up is totally different because people who are anxious, they have like an overreactive amygdala, and they're over anxious about situations that most of us are kind of like, it's, we can survive it. Where OCD is like your gears are stuck. And so you're having an intrusive thought and you have this need, this urge to do something or avoid something to get that brief relief, which we call compulsions. And the more you do those compulsions, the more intrusive thoughts you get. So with OCD, it's more about being stuck in this loop that grows bigger.
It's also fascinating to me. And I love that we have a long way to go, but I love that we are talking about this now, especially with our kids. I think that is so important. And that's what I mean. This workbook is amazing. And I'm going to do it myself because just this morning, something happened at work, and I could feel the anxiety. I could just feel it. And I even told my partner in the morning, I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm about to have an anxiety attack. So I just have to stop talking about whatever we were talking about and just take a minute and just concentrate on something else. And I love that we can have that conversation now. Whereas I feel like 5 years ago, that would have been like, what the hell is wrong with you? And now we can say things like that even at
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. It's such a good step in the right direction because so many of us struggle with these things. And I think the more vocal we are, uh, the less stigma there'll be.
Mhm. Now he told me, "Take one of your pills," but, I didn't have them with me, so I didn't. What are some other things that we could do when we feel that feeling? Because you definitely know what's coming.
Yeah, and it depends. I mean, if it's anxiety or OCD, I mean, just from like what you just briefly described, I don't know what triggered you. But that could be anxiety where you something upsets you and then it spins you and you start to get an anxiety attack. Um, versus OCD, the triggers can be just so nonsensical in the moment. And really, the difference actually, that was a good example because with anxiety, you just feel overwhelmed. And
Mhm.
you can have both. But, my daughter has anxiety attacks. Something triggers her and she can't breathe and she's feeling hyperventilating. She has medication for those moments. So that's different than when you have OCD. You do want to do something, which is a difference as well. So I want to wash my hands. I want to tap. I want to confess. I want to do an action to reduce my distress, but the more I do those actions, the more my OCD grows. And so it's um the answer would be different depending on whether it's anxiety or OCD.
Do you think more people have OCD than they even realize?
Oh, 100%. It's so underdiagnosed and it's so often diagnosed by mental health professionals as anxiety. And the approach for anxiety is so different than for OCD that those people just don't get help. And parents miss it too because there's so many different disguises of OCD that look like nothing. They look
Mm.
like they don't look like anxiety. They just like ticks or quirky behavior or, some weird habits and they don't know what to do with it.
Mhm. Mine, I have to check the front door before I go to bed. It's just what I do. I turn off the kitchen light, I walk to the front door, make sure it's locked, and then I go to bed. The one night I don't check because I was just so tired, of course, the next morning I realized the door was unlocked, and then that's it. That's OCD, is it? Or isn't it?
Well, that's actually a great example of the difference between anxiety and OCD. I have anxiety. I don't have OCD. My kids have anxiety and OCD. And I treat both anxiety and OCD. So it's everywhere for me.
Mhm.
But I would want to go and check my doors because I'm an anxious person and I want to make sure they're locked one time. They're locked, I go to bed. I feel good. Someone with OCD is not satisfied with that one time. And that's the difference. I lock it and now there's this doubt. Did I lock it? Did I turn it all the way? Let me go back and check. Now I'm almost to the bedroom, but did I lock it? I mean, I know I did, but let me go check. And now you're stuck on this loop that can go on for a while.
And I think you just answered one of my other questions. So you can have anxiety and OCD at the same time.
Yeah, they are comorbid conditions. And so that's where it gets tricky because you can have an anxiety disorder and OCD. And having OCD is anxiety producing, so it can be overwhelming, but they are different disorders.
Do you think, okay, so I grew up with a mom who definitely had a lot of things. And one of her things was she had to check the stove 100 times to make sure it was off. Um, with OCD, do you think it's something that we learn or are we born with it?
There is a genetic component to OCD for sure. And so we know genetics plays a role, but then there's environmental stressors that kind of seed that genetic sprout or that genetic seed gets sprouted. And so I think you have to have kind of that perfect storm. You can have a parent who has dysfunctional behavior and you don't develop OCD. Or you can have a stressful situation and then your genetics sprout and you have OCD. You can mimic OCD when someone's telling you to do stuff all the time and you don't know what's atypical. So I've worked with kids where they're told to shower, take your clothes off before you get home, here's the dirty pile. We decontaminate and it becomes a norm in the family.
Wow, interesting. Interesting. I'm going to be looking at my whole childhood today. That's what I'm going to be doing all afternoon. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you. More anxiety. I better find those pills when I get home.
Uh-oh.
That's the thing. Okay. So how soon is it ever too early to start talking to your kids about these kinds of things?
Yeah, I think the earlier the better. Teaching kids to sit with discomfort. We don't have to label our kids and say, okay, you have OCD, unless they get assessed and that's what's happening. But learning how to spot OCD behavior, learning how to spot anxiety behavior, and in general, teaching kids how to be flexible, how to lean into resiliency, do hard things, that will help. That helps any human being.
There's so much information now. My daughter, she's 25. And she went through some things and she's very vocal about it with her friends, with her coworkers. And there's so many sources of help now with YouTube and TikTok and books, of course. Is it too much or is it just enough? Are we getting misinformed about some things or more information, the better?
I think more accurate information, the better. And that's the problem. I think having a platform where people can share their lived experience with anxiety and OCD and other mental health struggles is really helping destigmatize those struggles and let people know that they're heard, they're not alone. The problem with OCD is you get into the memes and the stereotypes and then people go undercover and they feel shame and embarrassment. It doesn't align with their OCD experience. And so they don't wind up getting help. And so it's a double-edged sword.
So tell us a little bit about the book, Crushing OCD, the workbook for kids.
Yeah, I really wanted to put something out there where anybody who had no knowledge about OCD, a therapist, a mom, or even a child independently, can pick up a book and really walk through everything I would do in treatment with them independently because so many people globally have no access to care for all sorts of reasons. And there's a real deficit in OCD child therapists. So I start with explaining what OCD is, and I work in having them figure out what their themes are, what their compulsions are, personifying it, let's name it, and put it out there. And then also there's things that happen with OCD, like the family over accommodates the OCD. And so we talk about that. Sometimes you have difficult behavior caused by OCD, and our self esteem ultimately gets hit as well. So I try to make it very digestible for young kids, and kind of self-explanatory, but that I knew it was comprehensive.
I love that. And is it something, say, I could go through and do as well?
I mean, the skills are the skills. Everything in there is absolutely what I would do with an adult if you can stand the cartoons.
Oh,
You
yeah,
know?
sure, why not?
And I think, I mean, it's just written in a very simplistic way that I think somebody who has OCD, it's not obviously geared towards adults, it's a children's workbook, but the the evidence-based approaches are the same no matter what.
Wonderful. Well, and I have to tell you, I love your sign behind you. I love you to the moon and back. I actually have something like I have the same words, just a different sign at my house because
Oh, that's funny.
my mom used to always say that, and now I say that to my daughter. So
Oh, I love that.
I love that. Yeah, it's so cute. So, well, thank you so much for being with us today. Where can people go to find out more information about you and the book?
Yeah, I'll have a podcast and a YouTube channel, and they can find all of that at atparentingsurvival.com.
Natasha, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.